Hello and welcome to You Talking to Me. Over 1 million of refugees came to Europe last year, and even more of this amount is expected to come this year. As the EU leaders are struggling to cope with the migration crisis, some of the countries decided to reintroduce temporary border controls. Is Schengen under threat? If Schengen disappears and fails, what will be the economic cost for Europe? This is the discussion we will have today with my guest, Mr. Vistisen. You are a Danish member of the European Conservatives and Reformists group. Hello.
Hello.
And we will be also joined by Artjoms, our Latvian EU correspondent from Latvian Radio.
Hello.
Hello, Artjoms. So we are talking about money, so let's start directly with figures. So according to a study from Strategy, a French European think tank, yes, say that if Schengen fails in 10 years, this will cost to Europe more than 100 billion in 10 years. And so that represents around 0.8% of the EU's total economic output. So, Mr. Vistisen, do you think no more Schengen means an economic disaster?
I think it depends very much what you replace the Schengen code with. You can see UK have not been a member of Schengen ever, and it's not like their economical growth have been worsened than the rest of the European Union. They're actually done better during this crisis. I think.
But we're talking about 26 countries, so
we are talking about 26 different countries. But Denmark is one of the countries who have now reintroduced border control. And for instance, the Danish Truck Owners Association say that the border control is made in such a way that it have no effective influence on their bottom line, because normally the waiting time at the border will be between 20 seconds and a minute for their trucks, so it would not be anything more than if there is a traffic light going wrong in a major city when they do their cargo. So I think it depends very much on how you do the border control. And of course you need to do that in a flexible and technologically a good way. I had the same experience when you go to London, to the airport there. It's oftentimes quicker than going to Brussels. That's in Schengen.
So you mean, okay, including more passport controls, to you, they will not be impacting any transport companies, but the study show that transport companies may lose 3 billion euros a year in revenues. So that is quite an important amount.
Of course, it's an important amount if the baseline of the figures are made in a correct way. And I've seen the French border control. I'm traveling to Strasbourg many times a year, as you know, as a parliamentarian, and I don't think the French way is very efficient. It's very slow and it's very inefficient. But it totally depends on what sort of border control you imagine. I don't imagine a border control, and certainly not the way we've done it in Denmark, where you stop every vehicle and do a thorough search. What you do is that you take samples. You take maybe 1 in 10, maybe 1 in 20 cars out for a test or a quick interview, and the rest is just passing through. So the only thing is happening for most cars is that you just slow down the pace from 80 kilometers to 30 kilometers for approximately 1 kilometer. So in that instance, if you do that way, I cannot see that it has a very large impact. And that's not what we are hearing from the people already living with this border control in Denmark, both businesses and private people going back and forward to work over the border.
So maybe Artjoms, you could just emphasize, maybe highlighted some issues about trade.
Because what you are talking is not the real border control as we can imagine, not like the real places where you stop every vehicle. And that's, of course, also the controls that has been reintroduced right now are temporary. So, of course, it doesn't really make that much sense to build the whole infrastructure up. But then if we are talking about the end of Schengen, what people normally are imagining is the proper end, the proper borders as they used to be, where every car is stopped. And I think that, according to some of the German think tanks, Bertelsmann Stiftung had research recently where they were saying that it would cost 470 billion, I think, was their lowest number that they would put within the next 10 years. So
10 billions for France as
well.
Yes,
and billions. So it's billions and billions and billions of money, and also, of course, we have to count the investment on the creating this infrastructure. Do you really think that Europe has the money and resources to afford this kind of project at this particular stage?
First of all, I think there's very different experiences with border control before Schengen. The things we have with Germany now is very similar to the thing we had before with Germany. We never stopped every car. Yeah, I think you have to go back to the Nazi regime before we stopped every car on the German-Danish border. So of course there's a different level on escalation here of what you define border control as. I don't imagine Eastern German, Berlin War type border control situation. But to your question about if we can afford it, you know, the alternative is not doing anything, because we have this very huge influx and we don't have the ability right now or the capability to protect the external borders. The entire problem for me for the Schengen Corporation is that it was built on the assumption that we had external borders. But in reality, not even only during this refugee crisis, it's just been emphasized a lot during the crisis, but also before we had 10,000s of people coming to Italy unregistered, not being controlled with the external borders. So the question is not where to have the border control. The question is if we believe that the external border control in the time frame we are working in can be efficient enough. And I think a lot of European politicians, and especially a lot of the peoples in Europe, have lost faith in the external borders as is now.
Shouldn't we invest then in Italy and in Greece and try to solve the issues there?
I think it's not one or the other. I think we have to do both. I think we have to do the hotspots. We have to try to do more in the coast guards and see in the Commission package there's good proposals. I think some of them are far-reaching, but a lot of it's very sensible. But these things will not come tomorrow, and these things will never be very efficient, because, you know, it's impossible to control the entire Mediterranean Ocean, and even if you could do so, we have very large land borders in Yugoslavia and also towards Turkey.
Okay, we will go on now with one question from our Greek partner related to all the effort, to the financial loss that the country could face with the Schengen failure. We listen.
All recent studies have shown that consequences on national economies will be very important if the Schengen area ceases to exist. However, many member states, especially in Eastern Europe, still push for the closure of borders. Can Europe afford this, especially in light of the financial crisis it is still facing?
We were already talking about this, but I wanted to focus on Greece and Spain, actually. I mean, what would be the impact for them, especially?
Especially now, it's very expensive for these border states to handle this influx of migrants. It's very straining on the Greek economy. They also have a lot of other problems to deal with. But right now, I think more or less Europe have given up on Greece in this situation. We are talking about a fence in Macedonia actually cutting Greece out of the equation and saying that the European borders, we have already sort of given up on Greece. That will now begin in Macedonia, not even a EU country. So in reality, I think we've passed the point where most in this town is believing that the Greek situation will get under control anytime soon. And I've just visited Turkey with the budgetary committee, and my impression was that the Turkish government also believe that this influx will not even be the same, but also increase during this coming year.
Mm-hmm. So related to this, I mean, to the problem with in the southern countries, we have a question and comment on Facebook. Giorgio wrote, "The problem is not the internal borders, but the fact that countries in the north of Europe didn't care helping Italy or Greece or Spain." So I wanted to ask you, do you agree with Giorgio accusing the northern EU countries?
It depends what help is defined like, because if you see where refugees choose to stay, we actually in Denmark have more refugees coming per capita than Italy had when the rise was, because they of course came to Italy, but not very many wanted to be refugees in Italy. Apparently, they would rather be it in Sweden and Germany. And
so
apparently
they don't stay, but
they go on. Of course, it strains their system, their economy with the influx, but the long-term effects of the migrants is primarily lying in the northern European countries. But we can make this a blame game all day. I don't think it will solve the real problem. The real solution will be to tackle the root cause of the problem, not just try to to blame East, West, North and South, because we can do that, and we've done that for several months now. But it will not solve this problem to force Eastern Europe to take more refugees. It will not solve this problem to say to Italy that they should register everyone, because no one does that. Germany doesn't do it, we don't do it, Sweden don't do it. So let's be realistic and try to find a solution instead of trying to find out what went wrong in the past, which is a very exciting
Okay,
task.
Artyom, you've got a question.
One of the other factor that was mentioned in the recent debates regarding this was the phrase said by the Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, saying that he believes that without Schengen, Euro also doesn't make sense, because there should be some kind of a common territory for the common currency. Do you believe that the reintroduction of border controls, at least let's say in a way that you imagine it, would affect the functioning of the monetary union of the Eurozone?
I don't really see how that is mutually exclusive to have the monetary union and border controls. But for a non-Euro country, I don't think I have the best abilities to speak on that. Denmark still have its own currency, but of course, if
it's good to have your point of view as a non-EU
my
Euro
point
member.
of view
Maybe
is my point of view is that the euro has a lot more serious problems in its construction and its way it's handled than if Schengen's not there. The euro has major problems in the way it was constructed, and that's what we see now in Greece and other countries. And I think if you want to save the euro, focus on that. Don't focus on the Schengen. That is a very little issue when we talk about the euro crisis. It's a very important issue on other accounts, but in regards to the euro, I don't think it's a major issue.
Yeah, so let's move on. So maybe if Schengen fails, or maybe there is another solution that it has been raised among some media. So the idea of having a mini Schengen, just including only the few EU countries who initially created Schengen. So related to this, we have a question from Joachim, our Polskie radio partner from Poland. Let's listen.
Hello from Warsaw. Schengen is for many Europeans a symbol of freedom within the European Union. One of the ideas to save the passport-free travel area in the wake of the migrant crisis is to create a mini Schengen that would include only the original members: Belgium, France, Germany, Luxembourg and the Netherlands. What would such a mini Schengen mean for whole Europe?
Mr. Vistisen?
Yeah, it would definitely mean that you exclude a lot of other countries. I think it's a very French, not French, but it's a very Dutch, Belgium idea to have this mini Schengen. In the Nordic countries, we also had this visa-free travel between the Scandinavian countries, Finland and Iceland. And of course, you can go back to that, but then it would not really be a European issue anymore. Then it would be a regional issue, which countries you decide not to have passport controls towards. But the fundamental fact is that even now we always have to carry our identifications, even though we don't have to show them at the border. I could be asked by the Belgian police to show it when I walk out this building. So I think the important thing is here to make it easy to cross borders, but also have the proper control of people with bad intentions. So I think it's better to have a good mix and then include all the countries than to make this exclusion policy, because it will just create artificial borders within Europe.
I mean, it's funny that there is no France in this mini Schengen.
Yes, and Italy is also a regional country, but of course it would not make very much sense because they don't cross border with any of the other regional countries. So it is in reality, I think, not a suitable idea. But maybe the Benelux countries, the three of them, will go together and do something because they're very integrated in each other. But that will be more bilateral thing than a European issue.
But even for Denmark, I wanted to know, even for Denmark, what is really the positive impact of Schengen? In a grade by 26, or maybe it would be easier if they were just reduced but only with 5 countries, or for Denmark itself, for your country, do you fear about the failure of Schengen or not?
I think, of course, it's always good to make it easier to travel if the security is following along with it. But I think in Denmark we have influenced a lot of also negative consequences with not having the proper Schengen external borders in place, and we have experienced a lot of organized crime that we were not used to before. So therefore, I think from the Danish point of view, there is actually quite a big majority in the opinion polls wanting to have some sort of border control. But of course, there is also disadvantages if it's not made in an efficient way. But for instance, in big vacation weeks, there will be more queues than normal days, and that of course is a disadvantage if you're going on vacation.
And of course, the Öresund Bridge, which of course right now is causing a lot of trouble.
It is causing a lot of trouble. The Swedes have made a more extensive border control than we did to Germany. The Swedish one is much more bureaucratic. They have to stop every public transportation. We don't stop public transportation between Denmark and Germany. The Swedes are doing that. So of course it's a problem for what they call the region, the Great Copenhagen region, where the southern Sweden is also included. It's a problem for people going back and forward to work. And that's what I mean by having an efficient way of doing this instead of a very bureaucratic way where I stop all the trains and have people go out and go in again.
So that's it. So I wanted to have your last words about your prediction about the following months about the Schengen area.
I think if we are not going, if the influx of migrants is not going to stop, if it's becoming the same levels as last year, I think that Schengen, at least for a period, will be put out of place, maybe for a 2-year term, maybe more indefinitely. But I definitely think that we will not be able to go on in this way. I don't think any European countries really would be able to accept more than 1 million migrants coming. And I definitely don't think that Germany and Sweden can take all of them this year. So I think it'll create tensions that we have not even begun to imagine yet.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vistisen, for coming. Thank you, Artyom.
Thank you.
And thank you for following us. Bye. See you next time. Bye.